Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Toaster Talk, episode number 20. The background looks a little different. There seem to be a lot more people around me because we are doing our first in-person session with the Toast Network, and we welcome all of you to our show today. You have some familiar faces around you. Me, the host Vivek, I'd like to introduce our Hammy fan Twinkle, along with Prashanth, who has been wearing the red for as long as we can remember, and he shipped himself from the Bahrain Grand Prix to Prix for this show. Last but not the least, the living, breathing encyclopedia of everything F1, Vignesh, and a big fan of the FIA. And we'll be talking about the FIA in a bit. With that, the Austrian Grand Prix, the Red Bull ring. It turned orange for various reasons. But let's hear out from our panelists. What were the key highlights for each of them for the weekend that's been so far? Remember, this is a pre-race interview or discussion that we are having. But let's start off with Prashant.
So for me, the highlight, Vivek, was especially the fight yesterday between the two Ferraris. There were so many occasions where I thought they're going to crash each other. It happened when Vettel was in Ferrari. It happened last year when Verstappen and Prix came very, very close. I really thought for the first 3 laps, okay, gone. The two Ferraris are gone. But somehow they survived, and I really like the passion of Sainz. After the win of the last weekend, he's been a totally different animal. I don't know what is he drinking, what is he eating, right? And that's putting a lot of pressure on Charles. Okay, I'll continue with that, but I think that was the key highlight for me because I felt Ferrari are really getting back to their groove. How do they become more consistent? We have to wait and watch.
I guess there's a difference over there. Right? First of all, he wasn't drinking Nandini Lassi. But there's a difference in, obviously, this Red Bull's given him wings, is what I would have said. Yeah. But that's clearly not his case. But the confidence of winning has obviously helped him from that perspective, and he's realized that he has a chance. It's not in stone compared to the other teams where you have your number 1 and number 2. So he has a chance to play that out. And honestly, I feel Ferrari's strategy, they still need to figure that out. Yes. They've got good drivers. Yep. They've got a reasonable car. Now the strategy needs to come in if they really want to make sense out of it.
Absolutely.
Right? One thing I did also just want to follow up with you is this weekend was very different in the sense that we had a qualifying on Friday.
Yes.
And then Saturday there's something called Sprint. Right? What's different from this weekend compared to other weekends?
So from last year, what FIA has done is to bring a flavor in the game and also give more points, a little bit more fight. They have identified 3 races per season as a sprint race weekend. Now for the benefits of the audience, typically a race weekend is a 3-day race weekend. Actually sometimes 4 also. Friday is practice, Saturday is qualifying, and Sunday race day. But starting with Austria this weekend, particular weekend, we'll have the practice session 1 and 2 and the qualifying on a Friday. Then we have a practice 3 which happened yesterday, and a sprint race, and I'll come to that sprint race in a second. And then Sunday is purely the main fun race, the full circuit lap. Now what is a sprint race? A sprint race is a mini race, if you can call it. Okay, but it has its own advantages. You got to get your strategy because unlike any other race, a qualifier decides your position in the main race where you start. But in a race sprint weekend, the positions you hit in the sprint race decides where you start on the Sunday race. That means that you may have done exceedingly well in qualifying, but if your sprint day goes bad, you may start at the back. Okay? And you get points. So the top 8 drivers will get points from 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unlike the race day has 10 places starting from 25 to 1. So there is a bit of more advantage to the drivers if they want to get ahead of in the circuit, if they want to be in the front of the path, but also get some more points. And it brings you to the most important point of get your qualifier in place strategy, get your sprint strategy in place, and that defines how your race strategy hits out.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, Ferrari's got the constructors' highest points possible from yesterday, having got the 2nd and 3rd position. Right. So they are at the top. So you split out the points from that perspective.
Yes.
We have Verstappen, home ground advantage. But what is your highlight from this weekend so far?
I think it was very interesting seeing the way Vettel again said he was doing really, really well. He had the most number of overtakes yesterday. I think he had 6-7 overtakes before Perez took that and made it 8. Perez was obviously fantastic. He came up all the way from 13 and somehow just the first lap itself, I think he made up like 5 places, and then he ended up making up 8 places and ended up scoring points for Red Bull. So yesterday even Red Bull had a lot of advantage. So I think Red Bull and Ferrari scored the same amount of points. And Vettel, I think it was just very sad to see that the race did not really turn out in his favour. It's been a while that we've been all waiting to see Vettel perform again. So
Vettel did perform.
Yeah.
Just that it happened off the track.
yeah,
But for our viewers, do you want to sort of highlight what was the whole drama around Vettel getting a 25,000 euro fine?
yeah.
And all I heard was he stormed out of the room.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you know more about that?
Yeah, so basically, I think 8 drivers got a reprimand and they were called to the FIA's room and they were supposed to discuss whatever happened during the race because there was a lot of drivers pushing each other off the track limits. So they called all the drivers for the discussion and then they had a very heated argument and he just stormed out of the room. So FIA decided to give him a fine because the drivers don't get to decide who gets to leave the meeting at what point of time. The FIA gets to decide that. So I think it's the stupidest penalty I've ever heard of in FIA as well. But yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think after what happened last year, this year does feel like
Yeah.
we had a schoolboy F1 happening with jewelry bands and storming
Underwear, yeah.
underwear bands and storming out.
Yes.
Basically, a lot of discipline
Yeah.
from a schoolboy's perspective.
Yeah.
But let's move on to our encyclopedia and say what was your highlight for the weekend so far?
Yeah, so for me, speaking clearly, normally I feel that the race weekend is always the best. The race day, for me, always Sunday is where the happening takes place. But somehow, Austria delivered it on a Friday. You had 2 Mercedes crash out on a Q3 and suddenly you see that okay, Perez's Q3 laps were deleted, his last final Q2 lap was deleted, from 4th I believe he went to 13th and he started the race. Somehow Aston Martin's package failed, they went dead last or both out qualified in Q1. Somehow the Haas performed well, they came into Q3 and that was a lot of drama happening. So in my view and in my opinion, the Friday was where the most things took place and for me that would be the highlight of this weekend.
Yep, you got your money's worth in the first day, first show, which is very rare in F1. Everyone waits till the Sunday. Vignesh brought up good points. I'm going to move to our Mercedes fan. Friday wasn't necessarily that great.
Yeah. It was so not really sure. I think at least in Silverstone it looked like they tried to figure some of the stuff out. Lewis did have a lot of pace in Silverstone. I think he kept on putting the fastest laps throughout. So I thought that maybe second half of the season could be hopeful. Maybe if not the Drivers' World Championship, maybe at least second. We could get somewhere with the Constructors' Championship as well because Russell's been consistently scoring a lot of points. But Russell's had a pretty poor weekend as well from that standpoint. I think in general also he's been coming 5th. So yesterday was also 4th, which was good for him. But then also not the qualifier that we expected considering how many changes they've made to the car and the kind of pace that they're able to pull. Also Hamilton's crash was absolutely unexpected. He did get pulled up to 9, but then again he had contact with Gasly in the first lap itself, which is again a huge disadvantage. I think we could have done far better yesterday had the contact with Gasly not have happened. But otherwise I think it was damage control, but how long are we going to do damage control? That's the whole point at this point.
Damage control for 2023.
Yeah.
No, but to be precise, Hamilton's crash was not because of his fault, it was a tailwind which had knocked him out.
The qualified, yeah.
So that you cannot actually attribute to a car's performance. Till then, Hamilton was seen, the way he was driving the entire weekend, that was seen that okay, he would be in top 4 in quali.
I mean, that particular
And
lap
yes,
itself
yeah.
was supposed to be a P2
Yes.
based on the data available.
Yeah.
Valid. So it was basically a tailwind which actually ripped. And that is why I believe that okay, Russell also found a tailwind. Somehow
Yeah.
Mercedes are becoming
No, so
susceptible to
they did
tailwind.
mention that in the commentary too that they were the only 2 cars at that particular moment
Yeah.
when that gust of wind
Yes.
came in. So
Yeah.
both of them ended
Yeah.
up.
Wasn't it the same corner also, if I'm not
No.
No, it was
No.
different corners.
So it was different corners. But as said, Mercedes, even the wind gods are not helping Mercedes this year.
Yeah.
They need some help.
Yeah, and yesterday, especially with Hamilton as well, I think this wouldn't have been the first time you would have seen Hamilton come up all the way from last and then end up getting one of the podium
He's
positions.
an expert in that.
But then yesterday, I think he was just firstly he was caught up in that DRS trail. Firstly had the contact with Gasly, he couldn't make up as many points in the starting lap, and then he just was caught up in that DRS trail with that excellent Haas strategy, which I'm not going to praise a lot. But I think a lot of things worked to his disadvantage rather yesterday, as it has for the last 6 months. But fine, we still have hope.
I mean, if we want Haas strategy praise, we need to go with someone with a Ferrari engine.
Yeah.
So, Prashant, what do you think about the Haas strategy?
The Haas strategy was good. Initially, I was thinking, why is Hamilton not able to overtake? For a second, the DRS concept did not hit me, and I was actually watching it on my cell phone. And after a couple of laps, I realized that Hamilton is faster. He had a lot of opportunities to overtake. I said, okay, why? And it's Mick Schumacher, who is also fresh off his first points in F1 history. Like, I mean, if Michael would have been awake, and I'm sure he's awake somewhere, he would have been like super happy to see his son get points, right? Anyway, coming back, there were a couple of corners where I really thought, okay, done. Hamilton got, he's even taken Magnussen, but I think it was the most important play of DRS. Has really identified that without DRS, they cannot let Hamilton be overtaken. So they needed Hamilton to always be behind. And with the two Haases back to back each other, they knew that he has to overtake both of them, not just one car. Yeah. So even if he comes in between Magnussen and Mick, they still had to overtake. So they played it very well. Would it have been much better if they had played it more adventurous? No, they would have had a probably crash. Yeah. Mick is known for that. So when the opportunity came, Hamilton took over, but that was really nice. And I remember a few years ago, probably a decade ago in Monaco, where Host Verstappen, Max's father, held on to Mika Häkkinen for 17 laps. That was the highlight for me. And that was the era where Mika Häkkinen was a Schumacher race, and Häkkinen just could not overtake it without a DRS zone, right? So that played very well in their hands.
Also, I think just to add to his point, I think Mick is an excellent defender. Yes. I think if he has a better car, and I see a lot of Max in Mick actually. I think he's a very aggressive driver. This is not the first time. If you guys remember last year, Hungaroring as well, he just put this excellent defense against Max as well.
Yes.
And then Max couldn't overtake, and then he just gave up on the race. Lewis, as we know, is a lot more determined whenever he's in a situation like this. He wants to do it, he will get it done. So I see a lot of Max in Mick in this particular aspect as well, where I see that he's
apart from the fact that both of them have F1 driving fathers.
Yeah.
Yes. No, but always, your first win gives you that. First win, first points are always special, and that actually propels you. See Sainz, he got his first win and the drive changed completely.
Yes.
For Mick, his first point was like that energy booster, where he had actually kept, I believe for 2 laps he had kept Perez also on the hold. The best thing was Perez was able to overtake both the cars in a single turn.
Yeah, right.
And that is where Perez had an advantage.
Right.
Whereas for Hamilton, if you see, right, so Hamilton was constantly stuck between the Schumacher and the Haas, which is K-Man. But all these things boils down to where Haas had qualified.
Yeah.
If they had not qualified that high up, right, they would have never been able to play the strategy game.
Right.
Since they were high up, Hamilton was unfortunate to get a contact with Gasly. He was down, Perez was down, so they could take advantage of the situation. To a level, I thought, okay, Mick was going to get his first points from Sprint also. Yeah. Only that, okay, Hamilton overtook him. But yeah, that was an excellent race in Haas's perspective.
But I do want to talk about one interesting part of this entire race, right? And we briefly touched upon Perez and how he got pushed out into at 13th position, and that was way later, like literally overnight is when we got to know that this happened, at least from an Indian viewer standpoint. 13th, that meant Lance Stroll didn't get a chance to better his performance. Like, it put up so many question marks for all of us. But irrespective of all of that, so that's one part. The second part is Perez's drive throughout, right? He's got this push also to prove, and I feel if we had to do predictions for today, I personally would say Perez is going to make it to the podium. But Vignesh, what do you think about Perez's drive and all the controversy around that?
Yeah. So first thing was that Perez, the reason why his Q2 lap was so Q3 lap was deleted mainly because of his last Q2 lap. Now you have to see this thing that in Q2 his final lap, because of which he qualified into Q3, was because he had exceeded the track limits. So by default, your Q2 is gone, so your Q3 is also gone. And that is where he had that ripple effect, which I believe the Red Bull should have identified. They also couldn't. But then his drive. Now Perez, in a word, he is there to prove that okay, he is going to be a world champion with RB. That's what his goal is. But somehow he has been thrown into situations where he is being put into a level where RB always gets Max ahead of him. Some or the other, whether it's team orders or like yesterday where he had faced a problem with the penalties. But every time Perez has this habit that last year also I believe when he came to RB for the first time, from pit lane he started and he ended up in a podium.
Yeah.
He has been performing for Red Bull, and they need it because they were never having a consistently good second driver. Now he is delivering it. I hope Red Bull treats him as equal as Max and gives him the opportunity to race. That's it.
Well, everything what you said is right, but I would disagree to the last point. You know,
Absolutely.
always every team has a favorite, and Max already being a world champion just fresh off the last year.
Yeah.
That's going to be difficult. Yes, but I totally agree to your point that as Checo scaled his level of driving in the last 12 months, absolutely. And I see the same with Sainz, right?
Yeah.
Being fresh off the victory. Would Russell now do that, or is it Hamilton's last year? I don't know, right? Meaning,
Yeah.
if Hamilton retires by end of this year, who's going to be their second driver? Who's going to get those points and make sure Mercedes comes to the top 3? That's going to be a thing
To Russell's benefit, at least he's been Mr. Dependable.
Yes,
If you
yes.
do this, and this weekend's not over yet,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes.
So, from that perspective, I would say he could play out.
Yeah.
Right. One thing I did want to bring up is with the crash that happened on Friday. We are at Red Bull home ground. The crowd is orange. F1 fans are not known to be as passionate as soccer fans.
Yes.
But the crowd reaction when the Mercedes car crashed, a lot of hooting around.
Yeah.
Like personally, I felt at that moment I was first worried, like is our driver safe?
Yeah.
Then maybe the hooting could have happened, but what are your different takes on that from that weekend?
Yeah, it was also the first thing that I observed after Hamilton crashed was that all of Austria lit up orange and they all started yelling and hooting. So that is disgusting, but it's not new. We saw the same thing happen at Silverstone last year when Max crashed out at Cobb's Corner, which was also this is the terrible side of F1, but you can't really deny that side as well.
You know, more than that, not only Silverstone. I remember, I think it was 2018 or 19 when Lewis won over Charles Leclerc. The Tifosi went wild.
Yeah.
They were actually booing just because, okay, their Ferrari driver was not able to win in Monza. Now, that is not new to F1 also.
Yeah.
F1 has been with Sainz. Tifosi is the best fan on the world, followed by Netherlands, which is the Dutch orange arm. Yeah. But, of course, it's not new to any sports. All the sports have it.
Yes.
Take IPL, you have CSK versus Mumbai. If Mumbai loses a wicket, the CSK people start celebrating it. So it's an integral part of the sports, and I don't feel that okay there is any radical discussion needed in this.
Very true. I think the drivers have also realized that. The fans also have realized that. But as long as they're within the control in terms of how much aggressive they go, it's fine, because I think the drivers do get that mentality toning that hey, you're in your home ground, expectations are very high, you've got to win. That's a very positive side of the story.
Yeah.
But if you're at a rival's track like Austria or Silverstone or Italian Grand Prix, then you got to accept and face the defeat, and you cannot show your emotions out. When you show your emotions is where the fan base and everything just comes crashing down.
Yeah.
It's an ugly part. Like I remember, if you talk about Liverpool versus Manchester United, oh my God, the amount of booing has been happening for hundreds of years, right? People throw bottles, people throw bananas and whatnot. But can you show your emotion? Sometimes it happens, sometimes you don't. So you got to live with it.
And I mean, I guess there's a lot to do with the passion that has come into sport. And when tennis can have it, I think every other sport can. With that, obviously this is the racing weekend, Sunday. What I do want to hear from each one of our panelists is what are your predictions? So we can hold you onto it when we discuss this next. We'll probably start off with Prashanth.
Okay, so my prediction is going to be two ways, right? It's going to depend upon the first corner, first of all. If you can escape through the first corner, then probably Max is going to win. Okay, unless rain comes in, which I don't anticipate. It's been a very bright and sunny weekend, unlike Silverstone, which is pouring cats and dogs. Max has an advantage, and I think over the last couple of races, we have seen that Max's car is very good in Q1, Q2, okay, or by the time it comes to Q3 or Sector 3, sorry, Ferrari is much better. When it comes to straight line, Red Bull is way ahead, and at least 15 to 18 kilometers of difference per hour speed, right? So I'll hold out to the statement that if Max can come unscraped, it's going to be difficult to beat him. He's really in a solid form. But saying that, obviously being a Ferrari fan, I would like the Ferrari to win. And this is where I say that I feel Sainz is really on a top-notch talent right now. He's in a top-notch, I don't know, as I said, what is he drinking, eating? He has an extremely good chance. So my final rating is Max, Sainz and Charles Leclerc.
That's a very interesting setup. At least the ordering of the Ferraris.
Yeah.
How about you, Twinkle?
I don't know. I think with Sainz and Leclerc pushing each other the way they were yesterday, I know they're young enough to do stupid things like that. so I'm a little dubious about their positions. I just hope they finish the race. I do hope they come in podium places as well, which would be the ideal order of how things should be, considering they've been dominating the track. I would also say that Perez has an excellent chance. If these two keep up their dogfight, I'm pretty sure that Perez is going to catch up. And I think Lewis' podium might not be that far away this race weekend as well, because he does have the pace, and I think he should be able to do a decent job at it as well. So yeah, depends on how the Ferraris play out. Depending on that, I think Perez definitely has a podium. Max wins, obviously, so it's just so I think Max, maybe Perez, and Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
Live on a hope for Hamilton. A Hammy fan never gives up. Neither does Hammy. Vignesh, how about you?
Yeah, so we are actually at an interesting juncture, because last time after the Silverstone, we had asked the same question to the panelists, and I was like, okay, we'll have Max, Ferrari, and they delivered it in the, at least the sprint. Now, considering that, I would see, in the sprint I saw, okay, Ferraris were competing against themselves, but Max was like cruising way ahead.
Yeah.
Now, because of that, I believe that, as Prashant said, so if Max remains unscathed in the corner one, he's going to be the winner. Apart from that, the two Ferraris, the way they are competing, I like it.
Yeah.
But I have that dubious, sinister thingy that a Baku might get defeated.
Yeah.
So that's in my mind. Considering all that thing, there is a person who came fourth in the sprint race who was just minding his own race.
Yeah.
He had no one to take care of, and that is Russell. So if the Ferrari remain unscathed, then it would be a Max Ferrari. If anything happens to one of the Ferrari, I know Russell will slot in. So in that way, I give my prediction as Max, Ferrari, and probably Ferrari or Russell.
And why I think this is clearly going to be a Max win is because the Ferraris definitely do not have the pace to catch up with Max, and they're definitely going to fight with each other.
Yes.
So they're also going to take a lot off of each other. That's going to give him that time advantage. So he's just going to have that advantage, go to the pit stop with that advantage. This is going to be an easy race for Max, really.
Unless he messes it up.
Unless he
Hometown
messes
pressure.
up. Yes.
Or the Ferrari can do what Haas did.
Yeah.
So you keep both ahead, Max does a pit stop, he comes behind them, and then they play the strategy game to destroy Max.
Or I'll take it a step forward. They can do a Sainz, Max, Charles, or a Charles,
Yes.
Charles, Max. They might do that because they have the
The
advantage.
Yes.
problem is Ferrari, both the drivers will not agree to this. One of them will not agree to this.
Actually, the most important point is that I want Ferrari to come second and third to get their strategy right. If they don't get their strategy right, I see them at a 6th, 7th, and 8th, somewhere around mid pack of the.
Makes sense. With that, if our fans watching the show think that this is not the order that it should be, put it down in the comments. Please share, like, subscribe. This is Toaster Talk, part of the Toast Network. Wishing all the drivers the best. A cool, calm-headed Vettel. A Max win maybe on the home ground. And let's see how it plays out at 2 and 3, because if you have heard F1 manager strategies and all of these have played out, anything is possible at the Austrian Grand Prix. With that, over to you.